Okay, so, I can hear myself, so I guess that answers the question of is, the audio working? So I know this is right after lunch. We're going to try to keep this light, keep it lively, and most importantly, going to try to keep it short as well. It is good to be back in person, live in 3D, not the 2D hiding behind a camera. So again, it's great to walk around, to be able to see people, be able to shake hands. Some of the presentations earlier, I was just wondering, when are we going to have that first dog barking? When are we going to have the first kid walking around in the background? And again, it's fantastic not having those distractions. All right, what we got going on? It's good? So whether you're here in person, whether you're here virtually, I am just so thankful to be here. We're going to spend about the next 40 minutes talking about building or maturing programs with minimum viable security. Before we get into all of that, who am I? What experiences do I have? Or why am I qualified to even have this conversation? So I want to start off, Benjamin Corll. You can read that on the slide. I am the head of cybersecurity for Coates. I'm sure none of you have heard of Coates Group PLC. Coates is an industrial thread manufacturer. What that means is we make thread. You may not have heard of Coates, but I promise you every one of us in this room uses the products that we create every single day. And how that is, or why that is because we make the thread that goes into the apparel and the footwear that each and every one of us is wearing today. So whether it's your apparel, footwear, your clothes, whether it's the pillow top mattress that is on your bed, we are producing the thread that makes our lives all better. That's what Coates is doing. So industrial thread manufacturer, and Coates is about a 260-year-old company. So been around a little bit of time. I've been in IT and cybersecurity or information security for about 25 years now. So I've been there, I've done that, done a lot of great things. And that has led to opportunities, as the slide says, to be an advisor for different organizations. Some of my favorite that I've listed up there is the Cybersecurity Alliance and the Cybersecurity Collaborative. So these are organizations that bring the security community together. So the Cybersecurity Collaborative is really a CISO to CISO organization, or security senior leaders bringing us together. What are the issues you're facing? That's how I ran into the same issue. This is how I solved it. And it really just allows you to have a safe space to sit there and communicate and get to learn other CISOs that are out there. And with the Cyber Risk Alliance, very similar. It just goes down a little bit further. So it gets you cross-industry, not just like an ISAC. It allows you to get cross-industry and talk to people around the globe and around the country to solve the security issues that are out there. I'm also an advisor for some early-stage startups. I don't want to spend the time getting into those because, well, I told you I was going to keep this short as well. But I have served as a CISO for multiple organizations. I've been at Coates for about 5 years now, and generally I go in and start security programs. And it's becoming more and more difficult to find organizations that don't at least have some degree of security program. So now I'm going in there, I'm advising, and I'm helping to mature security programs. Passionate about most things cyber and privacy related. I got to say most things, not all things, because if you start asking questions when we get to the end and diving really, really deep on some of the encryption algorithms, you're going to lose me at some point. So I'll say most things cyber. I did put my contact information on here because I'm sure at some point during this presentation I'm going to say something and you're going to be like, I don't know what he's actually talking about. So reach out, we can have a conversation, I'll explain myself what I actually meant to say, or we can agree to disagree and we can still be friends. So there's my contact information, my LinkedIn information as well. But the last thing is that disclaimer. These are my thoughts, these are my ideas, these are my opinions. These are not necessarily the thoughts, ideas, and opinions of my employer or any organization that I am associated with. The goal of this really is not, as I'm building programs, as I'm going in and helping to mature programs, when I go in, I talk to my board of directors. It's not just facing this shiny whiz bang. It's not, let's buy this tool, let's buy this. I believe that when we are establishing our programs, when we're starting these things out, whether it be starting it brand new or maturing it, that it's going to be these basics, these cyber hygiene basics that are going to be, the most benefit for our organizations. And my goal is to express some of that. And without further ado, really jumping in. My first mentor, when I started about 20 years ago, told me that the way to start a security program centered around 3 Ps: policies, patches, and passwords. That was fantastic, again, 20 years ago. But as attackers have evolved, as the risk landscapes have evolved, I believe our programs have had to evolve as well. So when I go in, these are some of the fundamentals. And I'll be honest, I've added and I've removed from this list. So when I give you my contact information on the last slide, I sincerely, if you see a fundamental that you think belongs or one that doesn't belong, please drop me a note, and perhaps the next time I give this presentation, I can change it. But my preference, again, when I'm starting a program, very much starts with this list that is there. When I start a job, they ask, what are you going to do that first 30, 60, 90 days? And my answer is, I don't know yet, because I don't know where you're at. So whenever I walk into an organization, I always start with an assessment, a risk assessment. Where are we at today? What's working? What's not working? What are the things that are being done extremely well, and where are the gaps? So I always start everything with a risk assessment. And then I don't want to reinvent the wheel. So we're going to start and build the program on a blueprint, on a framework. There are fantastic security frameworks that are out there. So again, we're not going to start from scratch. And when we get beyond that, now we're actually going to start defining expectations. And that's where our policies are going to come in. Policies are not simply pieces of paper. They are powerful, powerful tools in the organization. So I love policies and procedures. Almost as much as I love the next one, we're going to talk a little bit about asset management, and then a moment on configuration management as well. We'll move beyond that, talk about vulnerability and patch management. I like to say it's vulnerability management, not patch management, because not everything is solved by putting a patch. Sometimes a patch is not going to be available, and I'm going to have to put a configuration change in place. Then we'll talk log management. Simply, yes, log, and have somebody actually look at those logs. And then, do you train your employees? I've had many, many spirited conversations with other CISOs on the value of actually training employees. Spoiler alert, I'm a huge fan of security awareness. And then incident response. Things are going to go bump on your network. As great a program as we define and design, things will still go wrong. We need to know how we're going to respond when that does happen. The problem we have, we sit here in North Carolina. It is hurricane season. And we're not just talking, Carolina Hurricanes with the hockey, but it's hurricane season going around now. It has finally started, and we understand that the wind and the rain during a hurricane is going to come. And if we want our houses or our security programs to be stable, we need to have a firm foundation. That firm foundation is the cyber hygiene that I'm talking about, those fundamentals on that last screen. I really, really, truly believe that if we just try to build our programs without focusing on those fundamentals, that when the adversity or when the attacks come, that our house is going to crumble. So how do we get started? Again, I like to go into everything, starting a program, maturing a program, refining the program, whatever you're doing. I'm going to start with the risk assessment. Generally, I'm going to start with a SWOT, the 4 boxes, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities that are out there, and some of the threats. I really want to understand before I say this is where we're going and what we're doing. What type of organization, what business are we in? Coates is an industrial thread manufacturer. So we're not a highly regulated one. I don't have to worry about some of that. I'm not worried about credit card processing. We don't have healthcare information. That's important for me to know when I'm designing a program. I need to know what type of data that we do have, because knowing that data is then going to take me to who are we actually protecting against? Who would want this data? Who's going to attack us? How do I design a program to thwart that attacker? Is it always going to be a nation-state actor that's going to be out there that I'm going to have to design a program against, or is this going to be an opportunistic hacker an attacker, I'm sorry, not hacker, is this going to be that opportunistic person that is out there that just finds an internet accessible system that's got RDP enabled? They weren't actually attacking me. They were just scanning for 3389 on the internet, and they found me. So what data do we have? How are we protecting it? Who are we going to protect it from? If data is that new oil and people are trying to find the data, what are those things and how do I protect that data itself? And then that middle thing really is something that not everybody has been able to identify. What are your crown jewels? What do you do? What does your company operate in? And what systems or data is fundamental to the operation of that business? So it's not just where are your crown jewels, but what systems, what applications, what processes, if it goes away, is going to cause the most impact. That is why I start with these risk assessments. Who then has access? We're going to talk a little bit of identity and access management, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but who has access to that data? Which employees have access, and then again, third and fourth party. Are people going to attack my organization because they want the data we have, or are they likely to attack my organization because we are a third or fourth party to much larger organizations? And the risk assessment there at the bottom really just helps me to prioritize where I'm going, what I'm doing with the limited resources, time, and budget that I do have. So again, I start everything with a risk assessment. And then, this slide, the framework, this is more for your long-term vision, but when you're building a house, you kind of need a blueprint. Despite having 20 years in the industry, like a lot of us in this room, it's rather than just say, I'm going to design a program, I would rather go and find a framework that is already out there. This is what I love about frameworks, the security frameworks that are out there. There are blueprints already. They help me to sell a vision to the rest of the executive team, to the rest of the senior leadership team. This is where we're going. The important thing is realizing if you start a program and you go with the CIS security standards, you are not stuck with that standard for the next 20 years. You can mature your program and you can go from one framework to the other. I generally will start with the CIS, the top 20 or now the top 17 standards. And then as we mature that, I will then go to the NIST CSF. The problem with NIST CSF, cybersecurity framework, I'm a UK-based organization, and my EU partners don't always like a US framework, which is why I put ENISA up there as well. It's very similar to the NIST CSF, but it was designed by Europeans, therefore it is a little bit more likely to be adopted by European countries or companies that operate there. And I do get, before I get anybody dropping me a note to tell me that the ISO standard there is not a framework. I do agree it's not a framework. It is a series of standards, but it is also a very common one to be out there too. And I do believe that you start with some of the others, you work your way towards the ISO 27000 standard as well. So again, we're putting a framework in because we need to know where we're going, how we're going to get there. We're not trying to figure out with the NIST CSF, how am I going to get all 104 of these things in place in the first 90, 60, 180 days. We are trying to just start in the basics, which is why I like to start with the CIS. Much shorter, a little bit easier. Then once we know what type of organization, we know the house that we want to build, we're going to then move to, in my opinion, the policies and the standards. And I'm going to work with my HR and my legal teams. These policies have two purposes. The policies are designed to protect the people, to protect the organization. Really, those are the twofold, people and organization to protect. But the policies, this is where the executive management truly sets their expectations. What do we expect of people? How do we expect them to behave? The way that we communicate as the executive team to the rest of the organization comes in these policies. We put them in place, set those expectations, and then we communicate it to them. And by communicating it, language matters. This needs to be in simple language. We don't need to have legalese in here. We need to make sure that people can read it, understand it, and words matter. My lawyers did not like when I started my policies And I use words like should not, shall. The lawyers like, and talk to your legal team, but my lawyers like the words must and must not. So language matters. And then the policies, how do we enforce these? And this is why I love partnering with HR. This is why I love partnering with legal, because they're going to be the team that is actually going to enforce these. Consistency matters. If I have one individual that is going to websites they should not be going to, and that is called out in the acceptable use as they must not do that, am I going to hold them accountable to that? And I'm going to use HR and I'm going to use legal in order to track that down. So I have consistently enforcement of policies, because I do not believe that, excuse me, I don't want to lose my voice while I'm up here. I need to have that consistency. And the last thing I will mention when it comes to policies is I will have more policies than fewer policies. When I first started drafting policies, I had a 60-page policy. I took this 60-page policy, I gave it to HR, HR distributed to the entire company, and every person had to sign off that they received it, that they read it, and that they agreed to abide by it. The problem is, I can promise I am the only person in that organization that read all 60 pages of that policy. So policies, make them shorter, keep them in common everyday language, and set the expectations of what you want people to do and how you want them to do it. Then once we move past that, we're actually going to talk about, rubber meets the road here, asset management. I want to answer two questions. What's on my network, and what's on my network? So what's on my network is going to be what's there today that wasn't there yesterday, and what is not there today that was there yesterday or last week, and am I okay with this? And the things that are there, are they following the standards that my organization has put out there? If I have Windows machines that are connecting, are they joined to my Azure directory? And if not, do I care? What type of access do we give them because they are there? Do they all have, and we'll get into this on the next slide with configuration management, do they all have my standard controls, my standard tools that are there? Do I have different policies, whether you're connecting to my wired network or to my wireless network? Do I have a guest network that I just throw straight out to the internet as well? And then with port management, can I connect my laptop to any port that is in a facility? So I run factories around the world. Can I carry my laptop, walk into any conference room in a factory, and pull a DHCP address? Can I see every other system that's on that network? Do I have that capability? Or if those ports are disabled, as they should be, can I remove, say, the printer port and plug my laptop in where that printer was? And now, can I pull an IP address? And can I see every other printer that's there? A previous organization that I had, not only was I able to pull an IP address once I stole the printer's connection, but I got to see every other printer that was there, and network, in their wisdom, also connected the printer network to the ERP system because they wanted SAP printing to be simple. So not only was I mapping the rest of the printers, but I'm now mapping the entire ERP systems as well. So port management matters. Understand what's on your network, what's not on your network. And the last thing, you're going to lose systems, you're going to decommission systems at some point. You need to know how to remove them. You need to know how to dispose of them securely as well. Shifting over to the right, what is on what's on your network? So now that we know the systems that are there, whether it's a printer, server, workstation, access point, whatever it is, what is actually on it, and do we care? So I like to have my standard. I have my gold images. I push those images out to all of my workstations. What else is installed on those systems? And are we aware of it? Do I know how many systems have this version of Chrome? How many have this version of Mozilla? How many versions of SAP or whatever ERP that you're running? What applications are there? What versions are they? And this is going to help us with vulnerability management. I just need to know what's on my network. And then how many people have local admin rights on those systems and they're installing anonymizer software or they're installing a personal VPN. Are we okay with that? And if we are, great. And if not, can we get it removed? That is where asset management is going to help me. It's going to tell me what's there, what should be there, and then what's on my network as well. Configuration management, not going to spend a lot of time on this one, but consistency is the key. If we know what normal is on our network, we should be able to spot what is abnormal. So I love to be able to say all of my workstations are the same. They're all running the same version of Windows 10. They all have the same patch level, but unfortunately, the reality is that's not going to be. So how consistent can I make it? Do I know what normal is? Do I know in this one factory, in this one country, in this one region, what normal is for it? I like to have my secure builds. I like to push those out, make sure everybody is operating in the same, and then make sure we do remove default passwords, change those accounts, and every system should be logging and sending to my centralized logging solution. Every audit log should be enabled, feeding it into my SIM, feeding it into my centralized logging solution, and alerting when that logging is no longer happening. Consistency is the key. There are conversations that are going on about zero trust, which is why I stole that zero trust there from Varonis. But I really believe that when you're starting a program, whether you're starting the journey for zero trust or not, it starts with identity. Who are you and how do I know? Every organization I go in, one of the first things I'm asking is, have you enabled multi-factor? And if not, why not? I want to make people's lives easier. I really do. Multi-factor is going to be one way that I'm protecting the accounts. Then we're going to look at longer and stronger passwords. With a longer, stronger password or passphrase protected with multi-factor, I am then going to remove this password expiration every 90 days. People hate it. It leads to bad passwords, and there's no reason to rotate a password that has not been compromised. So I gained some friends. I gained a little bit of influence by removing this 90-day or 120-day password rotation. Maybe make it once a year. Therefore, they're not going to use that same password for every account in their life, and roll out password managers as well. I mentioned on the last slide, local admin rights. I don't want people having the ability to install every bit of software that is on their system or anything that they just take a fancy fly to installing. So we remove local admin rights on our systems so that it does stay consistent. But I'm still here to run a business. I'm still here to make sure that they are empowered. So I'm still giving them some capability that even though they're working from home, they buy a new printer, they need to put this new print driver on there, we will give them the ability to have temporary access. And I do that with my privileged access management as well, where I give just-in-time access and figuring out how we can give people the access they need, still following the principle of least privilege, give them the access when they need it, for how long they need it, and remove the access afterwards. So again, I really believe identity, authentication, authorization is going to be fundamental to any program that is out there, whether you're starting that journey towards zero trust. And I get it, zero trust is a buzzword. I don't like saying zero trust as much as it's explicit trust, because you're going to have to trust something there. Just trying to make sure I stay on my time, so I'm trying to keep it moving along. The next thing I focus on is fixing our known bads. Known bads, these are issues that are already out there. So vulnerability and patch management, this should be a consistent process. We're taking a risk-based approach, not just following what the CVSS score is, but what systems have vulnerabilities that are on your network. And of the vulnerabilities that are out there, the 1,000 that were released last year, how many of those were actually weaponized? I believe the answer to that is under 10. So where am I going to focus my time? First, I'm going to focus on the 10 that were actually weaponized and make sure that I patch those first and foremost. Then I'm going to take a look at, okay, which systems, back to our crown jewels, which systems contain the most sensitive data for our organization? And then I'm going to focus on those. And of course, the internet-facing ones as well. And then I'm going to say which ones have standard processes or the most important processes, and then start there. Once I get past those more critical systems, then we're going to start this process from a risk-based perspective of patching the rest of the systems that are out there. And I understand, and I said earlier, It's not all about pushing patches. We don't just hit the easy button and things happen. We're not patching for patching's sake. We're truly going out there and we're patching to reduce the risk in the organization. Logging, monitoring. Short answer, yes, do both. Enable logging on every system that can generate logs. Do not leave it local. Don't leave it 30 days that's just sitting on your local system. Send it to a centralized logging solution. Once you're doing that, you're going to have to make sure that you're standardizing the format. I need all my logs to be able to be readable. And I run a global environment. We're not just a US base, we truly are around the world. So we need to standardize the time zones. Everything that comes into my centralized logging solution and my Sigm is going to be using GMT. Because if I get an alert from Hong Kong, I get an alert from the Netherlands, and then something from South America, they're all 2 minutes apart, but they all come into my systems, and they're sitting there in their local time. I may not realize that these may all be related and that they're only 2 or 3 minutes apart. So again, standardize your time zones as well. And when it comes to logging, you've got to have somebody that's actually looking at those logs. It's fantastic that you're logging, that you're sending it out. You're going to have to decide how long you want to keep your logs, but is anybody actually looking at them? Is anybody actioning them? The problem we have with all these tools that are out there, every tool is going to generate additional logs. So it leads to this alert or log fatigue that's out there, but somebody still needs to action the logs that are out there, action the things. Otherwise, bad things are going to happen you're not going to see. So log, turn on your logs, enable your logs, and please, please, please monitor your logs, take actions on what is being alerted. Last two things that I have here, the last two fundamentals, train your people. I've got great CISO buddies of mine where we go back and forth, whether they will invest the time in a solution like a Cofense, a KnowBe4 for security awareness training. I am a huge advocate. They would rather take that money and invest it in additional security tools because they believe that people are the weakest link and that people are going to fail. My take on this is that people are our first and our last line of defense. And that people, yes, every one of us is going to fail at some point. The problem is these messages are still getting to our end users. Therefore, technology has failed us as well. So when the technology does fail, I want my employees to know what they should be doing. There's something that people have that these technology vendors do not have yet. We've got AI, we've got ML that is out there, but people have intuition. People are going to be able to look at a message and say something is not right here. There's something that's going on and may not be able to put their finger on it, but there's something wrong. I need them to report that. And if I want them to report it, I've got to train them what to pick up on, and I've got to train them how to reach out to me. So I am a huge advocate of training our people. I want this to be a behavioral change as well. So I want to help them to realize how this helps them in their business life and how this practices that I'm teaching them will help them in their personal lives as well, in their personal banking, how to make their spouse more secure, how to talk to their kids about safe online browsing at home. If they really internalize that, they're going to be better in the workforce and they're going to be better in their personal lives as well. And that's when we're truly going to see behavioral changes. So I'm a huge, huge advocate of actually training our people. And the last fundamental that I put out there is incident response. Things will go bump on your network. And the quote I put up there from George Patton is, "You fight like you train." Are you training at all? Have you done a tabletop exercise? If you've not had an incident in the last year, have you truly trained to prepare to fight? Because no matter how great we are, whatever programs we have put in place, whatever technologies that are there, they will fail. Our end users are going to be reporting things to us. We need to know how we're going to respond to it. So again, we need to be running these tabletop exercises. And I'm saying tabletop exercises unless you're actually having incidents on a routine basis and you're going and keeping your checklist up to date. But most organizations I go in, I'm asking about their contact list. Take a look at that contact list. When's the last time that thing was updated? Half those people are no longer going to be with the organization. So you've got to look at your plans. You've got to look at your checklist. Look at those processes and say, you're mentioning a data center that you're no longer in. You migrated that to the cloud years ago. You've got to think about incident response. How would you actually respond? Do you know where your backups are? Have you tested your business continuity plans or your disaster recovery plans? Have you recalled the tape backups that you sent to Iron Mountain 10 years ago that you really have no technology left in order to even restore the backups that you have there? You've got to be testing this. And yes, I put on there, how often should we be running these tests? I put 2 times a year. I believe we should be running a tabletop for our executives. This is going to be your executive staff, your senior leadership team, because the message of cyber threats are out there, the risk landscape is changing, should not just be the message that I am bringing. I'm an advocate of an executive tabletop exercise once a year, and then a technical tabletop once a year. I believe preparation is the key. Having templates, having documents that are out there, having pre-approved scripts. What will we say? What won't we say? Who's allowed to say this? What decisions have been made? And then it's like in ransomware, are we willing to pay this ransom? That's not my call. I may be the CISO, but this is a business decision. These are the things you need to talk about ahead of time, not just waiting until something has already happened. Oh my goodness, now what in the world are we going to do? Why have we never talked about this? Tabletop exercises. That's the last fundamental that's out there. And then I've got a bonus one. How do we tell a story? How do we continue to sell our program? And this is where metrics are going to come in. Who are we talking to? I talk to my board of directors once a quarter. They do not care about dwell time. They don't talk about mean time or median time to detection, response, or remediation. What they do care about is how is the program going? Have we achieved the business outcomes that we promised them in our last go-round with them? Are we trending in the right direction? Are we better today than we were last month, than we were last year? Those are the type of metrics that my board of directors wants to know. I am sure every time I go in there, they're going to ask me about the latest thing that was in the news. And generally when I say we are protected against the latest thing in the news, it's because we have foundational and core things that are in place. It's not, I need to look at this shiny new thing or we need to get a new vendor in here because this threat has never been seen before. Generally, I'm able to say because we have these core fundamentals in place, our program is as solid as it needs to be. And then residual risk and how consistent are we? So residual risk comes in, we put these controls in place. Did we get the business outcomes that we wanted, that we expected? And was there any residual risk we did not anticipate? And how do we plan to cover that, whether that's cyber insurance or whatnot? And then the GRC, the consistency, do we have our controls on all of the systems? How effective a program are we running? Why do we continue to focus? Again, I've tried to communicate building and maturing a program really comes down to the fundamentals. I'm not trying to chase the shiny new things. I'm not always trying to do the things that are out there that are sexy. I am trying to focus my programs and build my programs on solid core fundamentals. And I really believe by doing that, I'm better able to protect the organization. And the last thing, network. This is what I had on that first slide. I really believe for us to be successful, we will need to be able to network. These events are fantastic. Get out, talk to people, meet people. What are you doing? How have you built your program? Talk to people, find out how you can help them before things happen. You don't want to call them up and say, we met 2 years ago, we haven't talked since then, but I really would like some insights from you. Professional networks. It's going to help you during incident response. It's going to help you when you're evaluating products. It's going to help you when you just need to vent to somebody. So again, professional networks, build it. Talk to the people that are around you. And well, my last 5 jobs all came from professional networking as well. So there's also that benefit as well. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I did leave 10 minutes for Q&A as requested.
I definitely have 2 virtual questions. So maybe I start with the virtual questions and then we'll push it over to our live questions. Christopher C. on our virtual platform said, how do you leverage Six Sigma processes to derive efficiency and reduce risk management?
I love it. Well, again, Six Sigma now we're trying to get to a quite mature program. So the short answer is yes, that's going to be as we're maturing. I mean, we're going to talk building, we're going to talk maturation, we're going to talk whether we roll out Six Sigma, whether we're rolling out ITIL, whatever that process is going to be. It's going to be our change management processes. Again, it's going to be a continual maturation of our program.
Christopher C. had one more question. He said, how do you standardize time zones when dealing with all layers of law enforcement agencies? I know GMT is the standard, however, many agencies struggle to do the conversion.
I have not run into having to bring in different logs from different law enforcement agencies. I've brought in from different organizations, different companies, different countries, from a plethora of different systems that are out there, and I've never had an issue standardizing the time zones. I guess it really comes into where you're feeding those logs, and if that the log has a time zone entry, what I'm feeding it into ought to be able to do that conversion for me. Unless somebody else has had that experience. I've never had an issue with time zone conversion, though.
Okay. Anybody here in our audience have any questions? Okay, let me bring the mic over to you because we want our virtual audience to hear you. Don't be shy. He was bummed out when I started walking to him with the mic.
Hey, I was just wondering, how do you pitch to the board or to, the executives the cost? Is it risk? Is it, fear? What is the most effective way to pitch the cost to put these things in place?
Yes. The short answer is yes. It is based on risk, and a little bit of this is on fear. You can sell in the short term using fear. I don't like FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. But when you do get in there, it is not a bad thing to share examples. I work for a manufacturing organization. I can go in there and share. One of our business partners just got ransomware. This is what happened to them. This is their experience, and I brought their CISO in to brief my board as well. Manufacturing again, you've got Maersk, the shipping conglomerate. Great examples that I was able to share with my board of directors. It's something that it resonates with them. So it really is based on risk. A little bit of fear, but how do I break this down for them in language that they understand? Look at my board of directors and I look at my executive team. What language do they speak? When I'm talking to my head of supply chain, it's going to be financial terms. CFO is going to be financial terms. Some of them are all about physical safety and security. So I'm going to use analogies that, again, speak to that. They don't put a price on how much did we spend in 2020 and 2021 buying these N95, KN95 masks. Nobody even looked at that price tag. Okay, now how do we relate that to the security program over here when the threats are just as real? It's human safety versus the digital data, but it's really what type of language can I use and help them to understand the risk. And I do like to quantify it as well, if at all possible. This is how much a ransomware attack could cost us. These are the controls that we have in place. This is then going to be the likely impact to the organization. If we don't want to be able to be spending $5.2 million, we can invest, say, $150,000 in this. It'll take it from likely 5.2 down to 1.8. Is that a worthy investment? It's been quite successful with that type of conversation. But again, fear works. But in my experience, fear is short term. I'm not going to be able to go in there every time and try to scare them.
Okay, looks like we have another question.
Thank you for your comments so far. With the SEC changing requirements and requiring more cyber representation on the board, do you think that's going to change the nature of the relationship between the CISO and the board? Is there going to be more awareness and comprehension, less translating into understandable terms, or how do you see that changing that relationship moving forward?
Oh, brilliant question. Love this. And you've got the NACD communication that is out there for the board of directors, and it is requiring our board of directors to have at least basic understanding of cybersecurity and the risks of cyber threats that are out there. So I believe that the boards are going to become more and more engaged and aware, especially if they're on publicly traded company boards of directors, and most of them are going to be on multiple boards. Once you get on one board, you get on 2, 3, 4 more. I can say since 2017, I started off to the board of directors once a year. That has only increased over the years, and then doing that one-on-one awareness training with them as well, you start establishing these types of relationships with them to where they're coming to you and asking you questions. It's no longer me, hey, can I get some time here? They are now interested. I believe with the regulations that are going to be coming down, this is going to become more and more common because they know they're going to be held accountable. They want to be able to speak. When I do go in front of my board of directors, as I was saying on that metric slide, they're no longer asking, are we secure? They're saying, okay, I saw this new pipeline. Explain to me. They read the news. They're going to come with a question. They're doing their homework ahead of time. They're in that position for a reason. They've got a lot of experience. And if I give them a pre-read, 20-page pre-read, they will have read every one of those and come ready to ask questions on that as well. So I do believe that it will engage these relationships. These board of directors, those who are serving on the boards, will start to learn more and engage. Opinion, personal opinion.
Do we have any other questions? Oh.
First, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, very wide, and I mean, you cover so many topics, right? I'm curious, what kind of security assessments do you do to get the risk in the organization and how to prioritize it?
Oh, that's a broad question as well. No. And again, it really just comes down to the amount of risk assessments, and we have to tier it. Is this a tier 1 provider that we're dealing with? We're going to dive a whole lot deeper. What type of data are we going to be sharing with them? Do they get our employee data? Are we just giving them access? So we really do have a 3 or 4 tier risk assessment that we're doing based on the impact, the type of data, the relationship, whether it's a potential reputational hit as well, or is it we're going to have 5 people that want to run this one translation service that is going to be a locally installed application. That's a business justification, and I don't know that that'll ever make it to my level, but a risk assessment's still going to be done there. So it's not going to be one blanket risk assessment for the entire company. You really are going to have to tier that based on the ask and the risk to the business. And we've got questionnaires that people fill out to say, what's the value of the contract? What type of information? How many people have access to that? And based on that, we understand how we're going to route it through our systems or who it goes to. So I hope that at least starts to answer some of it. We can expand later even further than that if you'd like.
Any other questions? I actually have another virtual question. Was somebody getting ready to raise their hand? Did I see someone? Well, Lena H. said, you mentioned just-in-time access. What tool do you use to manage that?
Right now we're using Azure AD with the just-in-time, the identity management in our Azure portal. So far this seems to be working for us. And then we have a tool on the desktops. Give me a second. It might come to me. Admin by request is what we use for our end users on our workstations. This is a fantastic product because it gives people 15-minute local admin rights. They can install whatever printer that they want. But as soon as that 15-minute expires, if they added themselves to the local admin group, it will overwrite that admin group, and it is going to log and tell me every change that was made on that system. And then it's got some, some policies, some triggers on the back end. If somebody installed BitTorrent, if they installed an anonymizing software, it will tell me. It won't remove it for me, but it will at least tell me. So that's a couple of the examples that we currently have in play.
Okay, is there any other questions? Oh. We definitely still have time.
Where do you see like directory or domain federation going with the next steps, with not having to trust things, but a lot of times, like my customers are constantly wanting us to federate or allow federation for their users?
Oh my goodness, that's again a loaded question. We can get into that at 4 o'clock too when we talk about the trends in the future on the CISO panel. No, this is going to be another great topic of who are you going to trust? Who are you going to share your information with? Are you going to trust global organizations? I've got, I think, 215 entities, legal entities, and we've got loose trust with some of them. Some of them are just under the global umbrella as well. So it's like, do we fully trust the companies that have the Coates name on them? Much less some of our business partners. So it really comes down to, I don't even know where we're going to go into the future with identity, with federation and all of that. Who we allow access to our data, who we don't. It's just going to be a bit of a nightmare, honestly, going forward.
Okay, we have another question.
Do you work with any consulting organizations that are very small, that are perhaps located in other countries, that have kind of like a BYOD for their employees? And if they do, is that something that, if they're a smaller company, they may not have the funding to be able to provide all that for them? Yep. What are the standards that you set of, this is what we need you to have in order for you to work with us and for us to be considered for it to?
No, absolutely. You talk about, we operate in 40, 50 different countries, and some of the countries we operate in are going to require that we use local companies. And then you get to those are going to be small niche providers. I'll have some time and attendance providers that are going to be there because we got to keep that data local in country as well. And this is going to be, they've got 100 customers. They have maybe 50 employees. If I give them, a standard SIG questionnaire that's got 150 questions, they're going to just say yes, yes, yes. So it's just having conversations with them. And it's like, okay, how are you? What is the intent? What type of data do we give them access to? Do we give them free consulting? Let us help you, on this journey as well. So we will continue to work with these smaller providers as well. And again, the niche providers, I really like them. When we go out to market, RFPs and RFQs, we're not just looking for these global providers okay, they can answer all of this. We remember where we started years and years ago, and we want to help other organizations too. So it's just, how do we handle this risk? How do we make sure that we are protecting ourselves and we're not just being foolish with this relationship? And then, again, we don't give them VPN client. If we give them access, we're giving them a virtual desktop instance. It's going to have our tools on it. They're not going to be able to copy our data out that we don't absolutely give them access to. So it's that trust but verify as well.
Everything's great so far. So my question comes in the risk assessment phase. During the initial phase, when you have to decide whether you want to do a qualitative or a quantitative type risk assessment, does industries lean more to one or the other, or are there times where you do mixed mode?
The short answer is it's going to be mixed. And the first time I took a quantitative approach, and I really broke that down, and I presented that to my group risk management committee. These are risk professionals. This is what they do for a living, and they still had no idea what in the world I was talking about. Quantitative may be the future as we're going, but there are so many people that still don't understand it. And I'm talking people, not just organizations, not just industries or anything that's out there. So I still think this is a young, qualitative, not industry, but not a lot of people are understanding this enough in order to fully embrace. So I believe that we're going to be making a lot more qualitative going forward. But right now, people, they still want to see high, medium, low. They still want to see 0 to 5. They know it, they understand it, they're comfortable with it, they can speak to it. And when you start breaking things down beyond that, they start getting uncomfortable. So I have more awareness training, more education to bring people along, and it's just going to take time. And I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I have a question about organizational structure.
Yep.
What do you favor, CISO to be independent of IT, aligned with IT, aligned with business, or what kind of structure suits most organizations in the current area?
And this is a standard security answer. It depends. I mean, it really does. So I have reported directly to the CFO, to the CEO. I have reported to committees, steering committees, to the audit committees. Where will your role be best supported? Right now, I report to the CIO, and he is the biggest advocate in my organization. Now, we can sit here and say there's a fundamental, disagreement, conflict of interest, because he cares about availability. Everything for him is availability, not confidentiality, not integrity, not the security. Is it up? Is it available? But again, he is my biggest advocate to make sure, and he'll fight for funding for my program because he sees the benefit to his own organization as well. So I think as you go from organization to organization, where are you best supported? When I reported up to the CEO at my last organization, he had no time for me. If something wasn't broken, he did not have time for our one-on-ones. He didn't have time for our monthly meetings. So it was great I was reporting to the CEO, but it got me no real benefit. So, and again, relationships matter. So do you have relationship with key stakeholders? Even if I'm reporting to the CFO, how well is my relationship to my chief HR officer, to my chief, to the president of divisions? The power of influence, no matter where you're reporting, is going to be just as important as your reporting structure.
Just a follow-up to that. So do you see conflict with the IT organization itself in terms of, hey, now you're telling me how to code as you used to see previously, the business telling you, are you going to tell me how to run my business?
Well, one of my pet peeves is it's not me versus the business. I am the business. We are one business. So there's, when I go to my development staff, and I'm trying to get them to understand, secure code development, am I telling them how to do their job? Absolutely. How to do their job better. Is there some strife and conflict? There was initially. When I go to IT and I'm telling them this is the policy, this is why we're doing the way we're doing, and I'm explaining the reasons why. I'm not just going and using a big stick and saying you will conform. I do believe by explaining the reasons why we're doing the things, why we're requiring the things we're doing, or I'm setting the guardrails. By setting the guardrails, I don't care how you achieve what you want to achieve. Here are the guardrails. Stay inside them and do whatever you want to do, but don't deviate from these guardrails. And if you need to deviate, you've got to come to me and we'll have a conversation. So conflicts, absolutely, they're going to be there. And the only way is by people talking to people that you're going to overcome those.
I think we are at time. Lots of great questions.